Hello, friends. Susan Axelrod here, the Confidence Coach. Welcome to the Confidence Zone. Today in a conversation, I heard myself say this: I do less easier. I do less easier now. The other person was a bit stunned and said, "What do you mean? What does that mean? And also, how do you do that?" I thought about it quite a bit since that conversation while I was doing one of my dog walks that I do. And I thought that I would come to the confidence zone today and speak about this a bit. I do less easier now. If you know my story, you know some of this, but in case you have never heard my story, when I was in my late 30s, I had an emotional meltdown. I ended up in bed for 10 days with no peripheral vision, while my little daughter got strep throat and had to stay home with me. And I wrote in my journal, "I'm having a breakdown and my kid is here with me." That's my story, right? And from shortly after that, I went on anxiety medication and depression. And I was on that medication for 7 years. It's an interesting story and an interesting journey that I've never really talked about, which is maybe something I'll speak about another time in the confidence zone. What was it like for me to be on anxiety and depression medication? At some point after 7 years, I wanted to get off that medication, and I spoke with my doctor, and he said, go to the gym. And I recently, last week, only spoke about this because I now belong to 2 gyms and do personal training and still do fitness outside, etc. Exercise changed my life. From that time to this, I created a way of working for myself. I've been working for myself for 23 years now. And I have moved from being a fundraising consultant to a coach. And I'm very proud to say that I have a fully supporting coaching practice. And that I do less easier now. Over the last decade in particular, as I have come into my maturity in life, using the wisdom that I have gleaned and gained, I learned the secret that it's really only others who want me to do more and tell me that I can only be successful if I do more and more and more and more. Well, my friends, in my earlier life, I didn't know that secret, and I did all that more. I did it all for everyone on time and pretty well, and it didn't go well for me. As I broke through in my journey to the light, as I call it, I began to change the way I look at things and see different things, the way I learned from Wayne Dyer. And I realized that I was waiting to be seen, and I was in the paradigm of wanting to be successful in a way that other people defined it. In my consciousness journey, as I opened up and allowed my soul to rise, I realized that I was in a very, very strict holding pattern. And in that, I was holding myself back. I couldn't have known this in my younger days. I'm 61 now. And, in those days in your late 20s, 30s, late 30s, 40s, you're really in a building and growing phase, building your life, building your career, etc. So at some point along the way, I made a decision to see myself, hear myself, respect myself, and acknowledge myself and simply do what I felt moved to do, which was to simply start writing and speaking. I dropped the pretense that I could ever be that person to go viral and make it big and be on the TED stage and get discovered. I lived with that desire, those deep, secret, covetous wishes that somebody else would discover me. And I lived what I call in an unrequited way, never feeling enough, which was really ridiculous because honestly, I was so much more than enough. I can say that because I show up. I've always shown up since I was 14 years old. I have shown up. At some point, coming into 50, I suppose, just before 50, I started speaking on Facebook using the modality that was offered to me freely. It was right there. You could go live if you wanted. And I had been a paid professional speaker for years, since my very, very early 30s in my industry. I had also already published articles and professional literature and so on. I was very highly accomplished in my own industry. Once I started to speak on Facebook, I became unleashed, and I realized that I got to say whatever I wanted to say, which for me came up from a deep internal inspiration. And I felt motivated and increasing, growing, deepening desire to give more back or forward and to do more and say more. I started writing posts that were meaning filled from my heart, from my soul, and from my experience, with a commitment and an intention to help others learn from what I had experienced. Eventually, my posts turned into articles for an online magazine, and you know the story that from those articles, I now have 5 books self-published, published with an independent press. Now I do less easier. I value and respect my own experience, my own words, my own impact, with a commitment to my own legacy. And in that, I have found relief and release from this hold of just wanting more. And I realized that as I matured and my soul rose, I wanted less. But what I wanted was to be more in my own self-actualization and in my own personal, deep, soul-connected authenticity. So I spoke briefly, I wrote simply, and I repeated myself often. I learned and used the tools that were freely available to me, and I brought in resources along the way of various sorts, support resources, administrative resources, etc. But honestly, very, very few. I simply do less more easily. When I speak daily, nearly daily, yesterday I was walking quite a bit and I made a choice not to do my daily live video because I'm the boss of me. When I speak, I simply open my laptop and I, as you know, I think about what I'm going to say, what is intended to come up. I don't speak if I'm not authentically moved. And then I do this. Sometimes I more easily write about the same thing I speak about, or vice versa. But always the easiest and least work is that I intend for anyone who hears me, sees me, receives this, shares this, to feel inspired and then further motivated to take action. So I no longer need to be on the big TED stage performing a rehearsed speech. Not that I don't listen to TED Talks. I don't very much anymore, but I did for decades and I loved them. And people still send them to me every now and then. I always listen to them. I appreciate the work that goes into a TED Talk and I respect it. But now I just do less more easily. And I don't feel in worry so much anymore of getting it right. That goes also with aging, friends, and maturity. But I don't worry so much about getting it all right. And I never worry about how many people are going to hear me. Because in a divine relationship that I have and that I've worked on, I have forged, I have said yes to, I know that whomever is intended to hear me will hear me. And this comes up all the time. It just came up today. A friend of mine from high school, she knows who she is, sent me a text with a picture that it included the phrase future self. So in some fashion, she must know that I published a book called Dear Future Self. And how would she know that? She must have heard me or read something or something along the way. Well, she just didn't come live. You know, I haven't spoken to her personally about all the books, my 5 books, but in some fashion, I know she must have heard. I have the biggest smile on my face because that's the whole story. I do less more easily. And whomever is intended to hear these, whether it's one person or more, I'm really deeply, personally, and spiritually good with that. Doing less when you're an entrepreneur is a vital skill to learn because it's really the only way that you are going to actually grow your business. If you are an entrepreneur, then you have all the bells and whistles going off in your head about all the exciting, fun, amazing, productive, new things that you have in you to share. But then we get into diluted messaging. And if you do it more easily as an entrepreneur, your output is outrageous. People begin to be like, how do you do all that? And you don't say things like, I'm too busy, or I can't say no, or I feel I'm so burned out, or I feel stressed, and so on. So I feel impassioned. I'm talking very long today because I feel deeply impassioned by this, and I wanted to share this idea with you. If you want to know how to do less easily, please contact me. I have spots available to work with you in a coaching partnership so that you can do less easily. You can feel better. You can do better. You can earn more, and you can create the legacy that you want. Okay, friends, that's it for today. Thank you for joining me. See you next time in the Confidence Zone.